Have gown. Will wed. A workplace-ish romance. Written by Killian McRae. Episode 4.
Chapter 12. Xavier. The selection at the Stop and Shop paid tribute to Soviet Russia. Unless you wanted soft drinks, chips, or energy shots, that was in which case even Amazon couldn't compete. Varieties of soup, however, were more refined. A can of chicken noodle, I knew from experience, had the consistency and taste of baby food. An instant cream of mushroom with more salt per mouthful than the Pacific, and a pitiful, single-serve, microwavable minestrone that could only look inspired by Wolfgang Puck when sitting next to the other two. Gnashing my teeth, I thought about the dinner I had planned to ask Rosalind to after shadowing her at the office. A dinner in public. A strictly business dinner. Nonetheless, just because there was an agenda, didn't mean you had to sacrifice a culinary experience. The restaurant on the Embarcadero boasted a wine selection of which Bacchus himself would have approved, as well as a picturesque view of the Bay Bridge, which I'd always found the more impressive of the two, that anchored the city to points north and east. The Golden Gate stood as a token to San Francisco's booming past, connecting the bustling port town to redwoods and mountains just past the Sausalito city line. The Bay Bridge, however, marked its domination in modernity, connecting the city by the bay to Oakland and Berkeley, industrial and thriving in their own way, utterly rebellious to the nation's general trend toward conformity, even if during rush hour that bastard backed up like nobody's business. And, unlike the GG, the Bay Bridge was not romantic, definitely less likely to inspire loverly notions over quiche or chicken marsala, which was important. I needed to re-establish boundaries after our last encounter. What amounted to a well-contrived fact-finding mission had almost transformed into something much more revealing. I needed to remind myself that our relationship was a business one, and that we were merely involved in a transaction in which my role was only to headhunt a husband, which I had agreed to do again. Why? Money. My inner ambitions reminded me. Connections. Reputation. If you can place something this unorthodox for someone so high profile, what can't you do? You'll be on top of the game in this city. Plus 1 year exclusivity with BetaHouse. Serious green. I found the cashier instead of giving in to the urge to run to the restroom and wash my hands. I don't suppose you have any produce? The balding, pot-bellied man behind the counter grimaced and pointed out the door.
There's a holistic living shop in the alley between those two buildings. If you can tolerate the stench, they carry all kinds of organic crap.
To not feel a total ass, I threw a few items on the counter and bought a lottery ticket. No hope of winning, of course. Lady Luck had proven lately how little she cared for me. Helen's holistic hut smelled like it looked. Herbal, as in newly legal herbal. Since the California electorate had openly welcomed Mary Jane, greengrocers had become the latest left coast craze in retail. It seemed there wasn't a block in the city that didn't host either a yogurt shop, a tattoo parlor, or retail reefer anymore. Not that I had anything against anyone who wanted to use marijuana in the privacy of their own home. It just didn't appeal to me. I hoped the smell wouldn't stick to my clothing. It certainly wouldn't calm Rosalind's stomach. And wasn't that the purpose of this whole endeavor? A grey-haired woman whose wardrobe originated in the Carter administration meandered out from behind a beaded curtain at the back. I could only assume this was Helen.
Can I help you?
Someone told me you might have fresh produce here. She grinned.
First time I ever heard it called that.
Nerves brought on a laugh. No, I mean like onions and carrots and stuff. Her hands anchored on her hips as the brightness of her features dulled.
Yeah, got some of that too. Over there, on the other side of the crystals display. Everything's organic and locally sourced. Only root vegetables this time of year. And blood oranges, if you care for them. I never did, but it takes all types.
Thanks. The selection was humble, both in terms of its variety and the size of the carrots, onions, and potatoes I snapped up. Rummaging through Rosalind's kitchen told me that I was unlikely to find the other ingredients I needed. I approached the dry goods display. Again, the quality left one wanting. Obviously, the store turned its black ink on its more profitable cash crop, but the basics were there. What's that? I pointed at the display of tiny brown bottles on a rack at the cash register. The shopkeeper eyeballed a barcode, trying to get the scanner to register it.
Aromatherapy oils. Some have healing properties or have other...
Her frame shook with silent laughter as her head jerked back, indicating the safe behind her.
effects.
Wafts of lilac and mint danced in my memory. Would it help with flu symptoms?
Would it help? Of course.
She leaned over the paisley-patterned, linoleum-covered counter as her hand drifted over the bottles, cataloguing them. On the second rack from the bottom, her fingers wrapped around the neck of a bottle with a picture of a black cat on the label. The Egyptian-inspired text read, "Fever, chills, and night sweats." She unscrewed the bottle and removed the dipping wand, holding it up for me to sample.
Go ahead, take a whiff.
For all my eye-rolling at the idea that something so banal could have such a benefit, whatever was in that little brown vial pleased the senses. What is it exactly? She replaced the cap and screwed it back on tightly.
This one has a bit of eucalyptus, lemon, rosemary, and lavender. Works best when added to a bath or an oil diffuser, but you can always use the drunk's method.
I bit back the urge to say, "Don't you mean the stoner's method?"
Just add about 10 drops to a bowl of freshly boiled water.
She continued.
Put a towel over your head, over the bowl, and breathe in the steam.
It's not for me, it's for someone else. I pulled a 50 from my wallet. Thank God for cash. No way I wanted a Potteries line item appearing on any of my billing statements. The rain had finally stopped by the time I got back to Rosalind's building. From the bedroom door, she appeared to be sleeping peacefully. I resisted the instinct to tiptoe in and check her forehead with the back of my hand. It would take me a while to get the soup ready from scratch anyway. On the way to the kitchen, I grabbed out the manila folder from my briefcase and made my way to the cabinet where I'd spotted a stock pot. Rosalind's impersonation of a real kitchen served as an example of how not to stock a galley where actual cooking needed to be done. The fridge played host only to butter, milk, expiration date 1 week prior, non-dairy coffee creamer, and a king's sampling of to-go boxes and condiments. None appeared on the list of ingredients for my mother's recipe except butter, and I'd limit that to keep her nausea at bay. With the pot on a low boil, I grabbed the bag from the store and took out the bottle of single-serve generic brand wine. Wine glasses were one of the few things the kitchen actually did supply. The red liquid swirled in the cup, its scent combined with the earthy aroma of the soup as the ingredients began to meld into Mon Mère's best recipe, transported me home. I closed my eyes, inhaled memory, and exhaled nostalgia. The only missing element hints of Mother's perfume as she'd drift between the kitchen and the herb garden outside our door in summer. Where reality lacked, my imagination filled in the gaps. Another deep breath and even feminine wisps tickled my senses.
Wow, smells good.
I jolted when the unfamiliar voice intruded on my trip down memory lane. Luckily, I saved the dime store Merlot from doom. Only a drop trickled over the side of the glass. I glared at Rosalind accusingly. "Why are you out of bed?"
Why are you still here?
She huffed back.
Last time I woke up to find a handsome man in my kitchen cooking. It was breakfast and he was naked.
Well, in this case, it's soup, and I charge extra for that kind of service. As though replaying what she had just uttered, Rosalind flushed, her face going red. She swayed, and I put the wine down and circled the kitchen island just in time to steady her.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... I'm sure your body looks great when you're naked, but Oh, frick, no, I didn't mean that either.
Shh. I guided her back toward the bedroom. I won't hold it against you.
You mean your body? How disappointing. Oh my God, I'm sorry, Zab. I'm going to shut up now.
Lay back down. Soup's almost done. A few minutes later, I re-entered her temple to plainness and set the tray on her side table. Normally I'd serve this with a hunk of crusty bread and a glass of red, but I think we shouldn't test your stomach. The fact that Rosalind didn't take naturally to being cared for, as evidenced by the pout she managed, was no surprise. I hardly needed to tuck the napkin over the neck of her t-shirt to learn as much. I raised a spoonful of the concoction to her lips and waited. She glared in response.
You're treating me like a child. I'm sick, not incapacitated.
I never implied anything but. I pressed the rim of the spoon more insistently against her bottom lip. The hardest thing a strong woman ever does is allow someone else to shoulder her burden. With a forced swallow that looked like she put every ounce of her strength into, Rosalind took down the soup.
Who told you that?
It's one of Montmir's, my mother's tried and true sayings. A truly impressive woman, much like you in spirit.
Ornery, high-strung, and too ambitious for her own good?
I raised an eyebrow.
It's what my first college advisor said about me.
She replied, having lost all of 10 years in her tone.
Said I was too determined and driven, and that if I planned to have any sort of career, I had to learn to soften my approach, or I'd be sidelined as a loose cannon. He also told me if I wanted any kind of happy family life, I should lessen my goals.
American men, I huffed. I know there are exceptions, but on average they impress me with their lack of tact. They never know what to do with a woman who is both smart and beautiful. They think you have to be one or the other. I'm glad to see you didn't listen.
What do you mean, American men?
She asked, accepting another spoonful of soup and my compliment, this time without protest.
Aren't you American?
Canadian, actually. I coughed a chuckle. I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen now, but by birth and by legacy, Quebecois, French-Canadian. And my mother was originally from Lyon, so I guess you could even say French-Canadian. All that means is that I have an inclination to love hockey and to dislike the English. By the time I got her to accept the 5th spoonful of soup, her eyelids had begun to grow heavy, her frame relaxing back against the pillow. A belly full of soup and a night full of dreams, and you will be all better come morning, my mother would have said.
Okay, I can't eat another bite, thanks.
No, you're going to finish this bowl, I insisted. We need to weigh down your stomach and give it second thoughts about launching any kind of rebellion. Though I could tell she wasn't happy about it, she acquiesced. After another bite, during which she stared up at me with puppy dog eyes, Rosalind asked,
Where did you run off to?
Like I wrote in the note, I ran down to buy the things I needed to make the soup.
No.
Rosalind turned her head away from the offering.
I mean, at the charity party. One moment you were there, and the next, vroom, gone.
Pausing with the spoon held high, it took me a moment to feign confusion. I saw someone I knew. I lied. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. You look beautiful, by the way. You should wear formal gowns more often. A meek smile shone through the tired expression.
Sadly, other than the wedding gown, that's the only one I have. Tons of smart pantsuits and throwback business attire, but I don't do formal much.
My eyes instinctively went to the closet. I forgot. You already have it.
You want to see?
With slow and swampy sways, Rosalind rose, shuffled across the room while wrapped in a clinical white robe, and disappeared into her closet. A moment later, a clear garment bag preceded her back out the door.
I'd take it out of the plastic, but I'm trying to minimize exposure to the elements. It was my grandmother's. It was issued by Wardrobe, but she convinced the costume manager to let her buy it.
Costume manager? Rosalind returned the dress to the closet before crawling back into bed.
She wanted to be a star. Never really made it to the main marquee, but she was one of the Goldwyn girls for a few years. I think part of her always wondered if she gave up too quickly. But if she hadn't moved up to Capitola and opened that diner, she never would have met Grandpa Mel. They had been married for 42 years when he died. They were
She sighed.
so incredibly in love.
Her face fell, and I could tell Rosalind's mind had gone to another place in her memories.
Am I crazy, trying to engineer something like what they had?
I stilled. You do realize I have a financial incentive to say no to that question?
I do, but honestly, am I?
I pushed the spoon toward her mouth. No, Rosalind. I don't think it's crazy to want someone to share your life with. And as long as you find him, who cares how? A tiny drop of the broth dribbled down her chin. I grabbed a tissue from the box on the nightstand and pushed it to her face. Rosalind sighed and turned into my hand. Her wet eyes softened, and I barely stopped my thumb from grazing over her bottom lip. The time had come for escape. I should go, but I have one more task. I ran to the kitchen and returned with a tall bowl of steaming water. Rosalind shifted.
Is this where you go psycho and I tell the news crew later that I should have seen all the blazing red flags?
I fetched a towel from the bathroom and threw it over her head. If you look half as beautiful in your wedding veil as you do in bathroom linens, you'll be the most fetching bride San Francisco has ever seen.
Flattery won't increase your commission, Zav.
I'm not sure if there's anything to this, I said, but Helen of Helen's herbal hut seemed to think there was. And given the alternative stock,
I heard marijuana can quell nausea. Maybe you should have gotten me some of that.
I couldn't tell if she was joking. She leaned over the scented mist and inhaled, slowly, deeply, purposefully. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth.
Lavender.
Amongst other things.
Yeah, I smell
She preceded her response with another inhalation.
your cologne. I love your cologne.
Falling back into her pillows, her eyes fluttered closed.
You're so nice to me, Zav. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now get some sleep. Her delicate hand clutched the blanket and pulled it up over her shoulders. When Rosalind had been silent for a few minutes, I delicately gathered up what needed to go back to the kitchen. I was just about out the door when a tiny wisp of a voice stopped me.
Tell me why?
I paused. Rosalind? Without looking at me, she said,
Why couldn't I have just met a man like you before all this happened?
As she finally drifted away, I asked myself the same question. Chapter 13. Xavier. Jack Colbon slapped down the stack of manila files on the desk like they had just insulted his mother, forcing my eyes away from an email.
What the hell are these?
Our files on the Betters project? Jack planted his hands on his hips and assumed his best "I'm being serious now" pose.
Don't screw with me, Xavier. You know what I mean. Cody just dropped these on my desk saying they're the files for tomorrow night's dinner meeting. A vice president at Google, a district attorney, Mr. Perfect Financial Group Director. Those we agreed to push? Not this bunch of yahoos? What circus did you hijack to deliver this lot of clowns?
Witch circus, and you shouldn't cuss, Jack. It's so unbecoming in a woman of your temperament. Beats could not best the shade of red on Jack's face.
Did you take me off this assignment and not tell me? Are you firing me?
I closed the laptop. Keeping the truth away from Jack's honed perception would take all my skill. There was a reason I considered Jack the closest thing Holmes HQ had to a first mate. Without the benefit of my psychology degree, the guy just had a way of picking up on the unspoken and predicting the undone. If there was one person I would never want to see sitting across from me at a poker table, Jack claimed that title out loud and in Technicolor. At the same time, I couldn't let Jack think this confiscation of facts had anything to do with him. My only solution was to lie with the truth. Close the door.
Close the...
The balding man's fingers threaded through his remaining patches and pulled.
Oh, God. You are firing me.
I am not firing you.
I knew it.
Jack babbled on.
You've been hiding something, going off to all those meetings with Rosalind, never giving me the rundown afterward. If this is it, please, just give it to me straight.
I bet that's the only time in your life you've ever said that. The corners of my mouth twitched. Now close the door and have a seat, please. The quip threw Jack off. He stared, huffing and wide-eyed. After a moment, his body came back to life. He eased himself into the chair, one vertebrae at a time. You're right, I began. I have changed my strategy on the Better's case. You're also right that I've been keeping it from you. My apologies. I had planned to tell you this afternoon.
I have kids to support,
Jack fretted.
And in case you don't remember, you're also Eleanor's godfather. So firing me is going against your solemn duty to look out for her best interests. I just hope you remember that.
Firstly, your kids are in their 20s and gainfully employed, Jack. And secondly, I don't think my being your poodle's godfather counts for all that much in the grand scheme of things. Now, for the last time, I'm not firing you. Just listen, will you? Jack demurred.
Sorry.
It's okay. Taking a deep, cleansing breath, I started again. I've been developing Ms. Betters's profile alone, only because the type of analysis I'm using works better one-on-one. Based on what I've learned about her, I know she won't accept whoever we offer in the first round. She's a learn, refine, hone type of person. Didn't you say as much when you were headhunting Carmen? Jack's gaze went blank as he searched his memory.
She did want to discuss with me the type of person I was going to find after I profiled her, and made a few suggestions.
They weren't suggestions. They were kindly worded demands. For something of this nature, she's going to be even more likely to reject whatever we offer.
So we're pulling out of the search?
Jack asked confusedly. No, we're just being more mindful about the way we orchestrate the results. We're giving her this dummy batch at the meeting tomorrow. Plus, there was the fact that I couldn't find the stack of files I'd shoved into my bag when I left to pick her up. No need to hint to Jack that my rush to get to her place led to incompetence. I had redundant files anyway, so nothing lost. She will reject them immediately, I continued. Then we'll solicit her feedback and after a few days, present her with the candidates you and I decided on together. She'll consider those ones a refined group, a perfected pool. Then she'll choose the perfect guy. Rosalind isn't the typical client. Every session I've had with her, she observed me as much as I surveyed her. She started using my own assessment tools on me even. Smart. Jack leaned forward.
How many sessions did you have with her?
I reopened my laptop. I don't know, a dozen or so. Coffee, a home assessment, a few dinners, those sort of things. No need to mention my playing nurse to her.
You didn't visit her at BetaHouse?
I schooled my features, putting on my best poker face. I'll be there this afternoon, actually. But remember, I still have your notes for that environment. I'm only going to make sure they match my own observations.
Xav?
Yes, Jack?
Are you dating Rosalind, Betters?
What? No, don't be silly. The tell told before I could stop myself. My hand went to my chin, pinching it. A physical marker of a lying man. I was surprised how difficult it was to deny the instinct, even knowing it would give me away. Jack shot up to his feet.
Oh my God, you are.
To be dating her, I'd have to be aware of it. She'd probably need a courtesy FYI too.
Fine. You are not dating her, but you are courting her, even if unconsciously.
I openly laughed. I don't even know what that means.
It means you're falling for your client. Idiot. Take a look at yourself, man. Seriously, a stack of dummy folders? You're trying to sabotage her prospects? What the hell, Xav? You told me yourself BetaHouse is a huge fish for us. If you screw that up by sleeping with the CEO...
Who said anything about sleeping with her?
You want to, though, don't you?
Who wouldn't? Other than you, I mean. Running a hand through my hair, I huffed. Look, she's beautiful, charming, funny, confident. But I know what's riding on this, and I have no intentions of screwing up something that will have such huge future benefits. Jack still proved doubtful.
You know what they say about good intentions, don't you?
I stood up and threw the manila folder on the table. On second thought, you are fired. All the color fled his face.
Really?
No, not really. But really, don't bring this up again. I know what I'm doing. Chapter 14. Xavier. Carmen and I exchanged the expected pleasantries as we walked to the far side of the third floor. A large open space populated with rows of uniform cubicles created a grid of worker hives from one wall to another. A few of the employees sitting in what I determined to be the finance section, given all the bar charts pinned to the walls of their space, looked up as we passed with mixed curiosity. Most of the workers, however, either barked into phones or kept their eyes fixed on the screens in front of them. Things been busy since the big deal?
Like you wouldn't believe.
Carmen turned up a flight of stairs to a loft area divided by glass walls.
Getting ready to move to new offices, too. Need space to expand. Everyone's in a rush to get as much done as possible before then. We'll be offline for 4 days.
You mean Rosalind actually agreed not to work that long? Carmen chuckled.
I see you've gotten to know my boss. She's timing the move to overlap with Kamakshi's wedding. Whether or not that means she'll be working, well, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
The assistant sighed.
Rosalind hates this office, you know.
Hates it? Why? At the top of the stairs, Carmen indicated the view of the floor below with a wide sweep of her arm.
This used to be a hat factory. Rosalind's office was the owner's suite. She says it has bad juju, and that her workers will suppose she thinks of herself as high and mighty.
A holdover from growing up in Santa Cruz, perhaps? Along with the Haight-Ashbury, it was one of the last hippie refugees in Northern California. Surely a little of the spiritual mumbo-jumbo of that culture seeped into her blood somehow. Well then, happy moving. Strudel's ears steepled when Carmen and I walked in. The German Shepherd hadn't exactly warmed to me yet, but it seemed like the pooch had woken up on the other side of the doggy pillow this morning. As I sat, Strudel crawled out from under Rosalind's desk and pushed his snout into my hand. Rosalind, mid-conversation, only acknowledged my presence with a few flicks of her fingers signaling hello. Carmen mouthed, "Good luck," before leaving. By the time Rosalind got off the phone, Strudel had curled up at my feet and gone to sleep. The dog's master didn't even bother looking at me, let alone talking. Apparently she took the description of my appointment as observational quite literally. If that was indeed the case, I'd take advantage of every moment. Her blonde hair, tied up in a loose bun, gave me leave to examine the delicate curvature of her neck in extreme detail. The slope was perfect and begged to be kissed. The lobe of her right ear peeked out, and I imagined nibbling on it, running my tongue down, sucking the junction of neck and collarbone as my hands outlined her frame.
You're staring, Xav.
I believe that's what observation entails, Rosalind. Her hands stilled as she rolled her head, stretching the muscles in her neck and arching her back. The movement made her supple chest thrust forward, suggesting what she might look like at the height of climax. I crossed my legs and attempted to hide the condition my imagination caused.
Well, I'm happy to report that the new interface we're developing is testing well with our focus group.
Glad to hear it. She turned back to her computer with rigid focus.
I never got a chance to say thank you for the soup. And, well, for all the other stuff that went with it. You really didn't have to do that, but I'm glad you did.
It was my pleasure, Rosalind. And thank you too. She passed me a screwed-up expression.
For what?
Letting me take care of you. I understand how difficult that was for you. Her hands stopped on the keyboard. Her voice shrunk down to the level of a mouse's.
For some reason, with you, it's not hard at all. It was a relief if that makes any sense.
The devil perched on my shoulder and prodded my good senses, trying to convince me to say something, anything. Probably because I'm only your friend, and nothing more, I offered. No pressure for any sort of quid pro quo.
Friends?
She rolled the word on her tongue, tasting it.
I guess we have become friends, haven't we?
Indeed. Why couldn't I have just met a man like you before all this happened? Her words from last night, spoken while she tripped on the horizons of consciousness, played back in my mind. Why indeed? Strudel's ears rotated as I leaned forward in the seat and wiped the smirk off my face, transforming into the professional I held myself out as being. I know you did something like this with Jack, but I operate a little differently. You have a meeting in 20 minutes. I will sit at the back of the room and observe. After the meeting, I'll ask you a few questions about why you said certain things or made particular decisions. I don't expect to learn anything new about you during this. I just want to be sure what I see is consistent with what else I've witnessed. Rosalind rose, taking a stack of papers with her.
So you think you got me all figured out, do you?
She circled the desk and stood next to my chair. I could always know you better. Quelling the temptation to run my index finger over the bend of her elbow, down the inside of her arm, and over the sensitive skin of her wrist, I instead put my hands in my lap. But time is short, I resumed, ironing out the husk in my voice. We're going to have to fast-track the particulars. She moved to the door.
The meeting is in conference room C. I have to have a brief talk with my CTO, so I'll see you there. Bring Strudel along if you don't mind.
Before I could inquire just how I would convince the dog to accompany me, Rosalind was gone. I looked to the mutt at my feet. Strudel raised his snout and glanced back, his expression communicating a sympathetic, "I got nothing, man." With time to spare, I couldn't see the harm in looking around the office. Field research, I told myself. Like Rosalind's flat, the decor proved sparse, unless you included sticky notes and stacks of paper. Her small desk hosted a monitor and a phone, a cupful of pens, some paper clips, and an industrial supply of sticky notes. A pinboard was covered with neatly arranged reports, calendars, index cards with notes scribbled, and... Wait a moment. Peeking out from behind a pinned sheet of yellow paper, filled with engineering notation that might as well have been in Swahili, was the corner of a photo. 3 toothy grins framed by bleach blonde hair met my eyes. On a chair was a girl of about 9, a popsicle in her grasp, orange streaks visible over her fingers. To her right, and behind her, a woman who was practically Rosalind's copy plus 20 years, right down to the sensible, if dated, business attire. To her left, an elderly woman whose blue eyes still managed to shine through her wrinkled expression with the intensity of a teenager. It took me a moment to figure out the girl was Rosalind. The careless way she held the popsicle threw me. I couldn't imagine her letting something that messy happen. Somewhere between this photo, taken years ago, and now, something changed. She was protective, cautious. I suddenly wanted to find out why, to tell her she didn't have to keep herself so guarded, to tell Rosalind that she could trust, to tell her that love wasn't going to destroy her. That was the job of a confidant, of a friend, of her lover. In short order, another discovery, one far more suited to my current difficulties. In a brown glazed cookie jar, sitting next to her desk phone, a stash of dog biscuits. A few minutes later, Strudel followed without objection, down the stairs, across the floor, and into the conference room without even the need to say his name. Several employees were already seated. They looked to the dog, who no doubt they knew, then to me, who they clearly did not. Substitute dog walker, I joked, unbuttoning my jacket and taking a seat. The rest of the people shrugged and resumed their chatter. Strudel had already polished off the bribe by the time his master arrived. Strudel she petted, but Rosalind only gave me a passing nod. I took a seat on the side of the room and watched. Rosalind maintained the helm in the form of the finest captain. Numbers flew around the room in lightning speed, and terms landed on the table that made me feel like I was watching a science fiction flick in the wee hours of the morning. Her diplomacy with her staff impressed. If another company had come to me searching for a CEO or chairman of the board, Rosalind would definitely make the short list. 10 minutes in, everyone's attention turned as the door opened. The tardy employee sluiced through the room before finding his seat in the back, opposite where I sat. It took me a few minutes to source the familiarity. Ivan Kirchhoff, a nationalized Russian systems engineer, 3 months ago I'd met him for lunch. I had ordered halibut, Kirchhoff had ordered quiche. Something here was extremely fishy.
Chapter 15. Rosalind. I followed Strudel's line of vision just in time to catch a glance of Xavier's backside, while simultaneously telling myself to ignore how nice a sight that actually was. Through the glass wall that divided the conference room from the hall, I saw him pull out a phone. With one eye on him and another on my client relations director, I balanced my attention like a belly dancer balancing a sword. He returned quickly enough, however, and I refocused on the discussion around me. Our strategy for piping things to the next stage was beginning to take shape. Yes, the deal with C-Tech brought BetaHouse to the forefront of the marketplace, but taking the lead wasn't winning the race. 45 minutes later, I led Strudel back up the hall. My pooch slipped by me and curled up under my desk. I was just closing the door when a hand snaked around the outside of it and blocked the action. Xavier. He made his way in without speaking, leaving the door open. His eyes never left his phone screen as he tapped it with eager urgency.
Privacy is such a critical thing in a business like yours, isn't it?
He chanced a flash of his silver blue eyes over the edge of his screen. I left my inside twist, but I kept my features flat, reminding myself that he'd kept the door open behind him. Like it is in any business where there are secrets to be kept, I'd imagine. You have secrets, right?
Yes, and I would really hate for someone to, say, discover something because I inadvertently left my cell setting about.
He set his phone on the edge of my desk and stepped around, coming within inches of where I stood.
You see what I'm getting at?
I wanted it to be different, as stupid as it sounded. I wanted him to grab me by the wrist and pull me to him. But this wasn't Hollywood. It was Silicon Valley. And here, when someone made a play, it wasn't for romance. I knew what he really was after. Slowly, I nodded my understanding. The men's bathroom is down the stairs, second on the left. With the tip of his chin, Xavier backstepped towards the door.
Thanks for understanding that I just couldn't hold it.
The moment he was out, I spun. The door was still open. I couldn't touch the phone, but I could lean over and look on the screen. There, in 8-point Arial, was the last few lines of a text conversation. The black bar with white text at the top displayed Dan Briers. Xavier's line of text at the top of the view was cut off, but led the conversation. Working out? Yes, Ivan's awesome. He's on a spec project. Thanks. You're welcome. Let me know if you need anything. My nose crinkled. Secrets, Ivan, working out. And what did Dan Briers have to do with anything? Last time I'd heard anything about Dan, he was raising capital to launch his own startup down in San Mateo. We'd even had a brief conversation at an industry convention around that time, but I had backed away when I got the feeling he was flirting just a little bit too much for comfort, and he'd gotten a little too curious about the talks I was having with C-Tech. That had been, 6 months ago? Secret, Ivan, working out, Dan Briers. Oh, darn it. The screen went dark just as the door opened again. Xavier looked hesitant to enter, his eyes questioning. Without turning away, I snaked an arm around my back and felt out the corners of his phone. I palmed it, pulled it around, and offered it out to him. Mr. Holmes, you forgot your phone. Xavier hesitated when reaching out. His hand circled around the cell but reached a bit further, so that we were more shaking hands than exchanging anything.
Thank you, Ms. Betters. You can't imagine how embarrassed I'd have been if someone was lurking around and found out something.
Corporate espionage is an ever-present concern in our field, I acknowledged, shaking his hand. It is, however, one we deal with quickly and professionally. You needn't worry that anything involving you would ever get out of this office.
Good to hear. I need to talk to Carmen for a few minutes before I leave. If I don't see you before then, take care.
Xavier? He stopped in the doorway.
Yes?
My head shook, confusion marring my features. Why?
Because we're friends now. I don't want that to end when the contract does. Thanks for finding my phone and giving it back.
He said nothing more before leaving, which was good, because I didn't know how to respond. But this wasn't the time to daydream. I had the receiver of my desk phone to my ear before the door closed all the way. A devious grin pulled tight the corners of my mouth when the party at the other end picked up on the second ring.
Hello?
Hi, Dan. Rosalind Betters, you have a minute? 10 minutes later, I emerged from my office like an extra in The Walking Dead. 2 terrible truths immobilized me. I was going to have to fire someone, and we'd had a spy. I'd at least give Dan credit in not denying the facts when I asked him directly, but I still couldn't believe what he'd said. Xavier's hands on my shoulders shook me out of my stupor. His voice brought comfort, even though he wasn't talking to me.
Carmen, I think you might need to clear Rosalind's calendar for the rest of the day. I don't think she's over that bug after all.
Bug? What was he talking about? I felt like dirt emotionally, but physically I was ready to run the San Francisco Marathon. It was then I looked past him and saw all my employees on the floor below, observing me with concern. Next to Xavier, Carmen's head gave a decisive bob.
You're right, Mr. Holmes. She's white as a sheet. Miss Betters, you better get home and get some rest. I'll find a way to work out the details.
What the what? But they were right. I was in no state to stay at work and potentially make a scene. Too many voices were screaming in my head. I took a moment and a deep breath before clearing my throat. I think you're right, Carmen. Thank you. Can you schedule a meeting for me and Ivan first thing in the morning? I couldn't help but find the rat bastard standing by the water cooler below, trying very hard to look like he wasn't looking at me.
Of course. Do you want me to have the dog walker come pick up Strudel?
No, I'll take him with me. I don't want to be alone right now. My anger turned to fire as Xavier's hand pressed gently into the small of my back.
You won't be. I'm coming with you. Chapter 16. Xavier. Rosalind didn't speak a word in the cab, but I could see the wheels of her mind spinning. I wouldn't push. She needed to process whatever it was that had happened between the time I left her office, having just told her she was a victim of corporate espionage, and when she stumbled out looking like she'd just given all her blood to the Red Cross. Finally, when we were a few blocks from her building, she turned to me.
I do appreciate it.
With no anchor, I didn't know where to cast my line into the conversation. Thank you. She exhaled with no great urgency.
That whole conversation I just had was in my head, wasn't it?
I'm afraid so, though I'm doing my best to get in there and understand how that thing works. The comment drew the rose to her cheeks.
I'm thanking you for telling me about Yvonne. I know it's borderline ethical, betraying the trust of a client like that. It couldn't have been easy for you to do.
What scared me was how easy it was. Not that what she said was untrue. I was quite sure I'd lose that client if he ever found out I snitched. But in terms of doing something that helped Rosalind, there was never a moment of doubt that I should. I don't suppose you want to talk about what happened? Something shook you up pretty badly? The woman beside me cackled.
You'd think it was the fact that Dan Briers didn't deny it when I told him I caught his spy, or that he told me if I wasn't prepared to play with the big boys, I should stay at home and shampoo my hair. I've heard far worse from far better people.
Then what was it? She turned sober eyes on me.
He knows.
When all I returned was a raised eyebrow, she continued.
About us.
Irrational emotions squeezed my chest, but I knew better than to assume. Us?
That you're trying to find me a husband.
She said.
Somehow, he knows. Dan even threatened me, saying he'd spread the rumor around if I didn't keep my mouth shut. My investors are already nervous enough that I've promised more than I can deliver on the C-Tech contract. If anything rattles too loudly, they could come after me to repay my funding lines immediately.
And that's what upset you? I asked, just as the cab pulled up to her building. I quickly grabbed out my wallet from my jacket before she even had the chance to reach into her attaché bag. Rosalind waited for me to join her on the sidewalk before answering. I didn't ignore the fact that she assumed I'd come in with her.
I don't know about you, but I don't have an extra $10 million laying around. If they think I'm behaving irrationally, they can evoke the clause that lets them liquidate their interests with a 48-hour notice.
But you're not behaving irrationally, I tried to argue as we both boarded the elevator and Rosalind punched in the updated security code. Even if they find out the details of our agreement, I still don't find that anything you have to worry about. Her tone went up several pitches.
Not anything I have to worry about? How can you say that? I'm paying you to hook me up.
No, you're paying me to find you a potential partner. Men have picked out women to marry in far worse ways. At least yours has some strong rationale behind it, and I don't mean to brag, but a lot better chance of being successful.
I hope so.
Her features softened along with her voice.
Oh, what I wouldn't give to just have to not worry about this all anymore.
I leaned against the door frame as she threw her things on the table just inside the door. So don't.
It's not that simple, Xav.
It is. Say. I stepped forward and took her hands and her attention. Let's take the night off. Do something just for fun. Rosalind examined me for signs of insanity.
Such as?
It was a long shot. When I suggested what I was about to suggest, most people either thought I was joking or prayed that I had been. Have you ever been to the opera? True to her word, outside of a Sears catalogue worth of business attire and the one dress from the fireman's ball that she considered too formal, Rosalind had no other fancy dress-up clothes. With my encouragement, she slipped on a pair of worn jeans, a baggy but intricately embroidered top that screamed Santa Cruz, and a pair of dock shoes. Perhaps we looked mismatched, me still in my suit, but I didn't care. I had Rosalind beside me and the San Francisco Opera before me. The Marriage of Figaro proved just the right combination of antics and heart-tugging reunions. When, in the final scene, I noticed a mist in Rosalind's eyes, I even reached out, caressing her hands in the dark. Afterward, I offered her my arm as we strolled the area around the opera house. Anyone who didn't know better would think we were a couple. San Francisco had begun to lift its winter veil. All around, tinges of green peeked out from flower beds and hedgerows. Did you enjoy it? She pondered the question for a moment, making me wonder if she was looking for a diplomatic way to say she hated it.
Mostly.
Okay. And what did you mostly like about it? Nerves drew her face into an awkward repose.
I don't want to sound insulting or anything.
It would only be insulting if you failed to speak your mind. I let that linger for a moment before adding, besides, I can tell when people are lying.
Cannot.
Can too, I insisted, then gave a wave of my hand. Most of the time. But I always respect honesty.
Okay then, you asked for it.
She cued her words as she took a deep inhale through her nose.
I loved it. I mean, the music, the costumes, the orchestra. How could you not? But the story? I mean, I don't get how that all turned out happy in the end. I practically need a flow chart to understand who was disguised as who, and who was trying to seduce who, and who really was in love with each other, and which ones were just pretending. And despite all that, everyone ends up happy, and with the person they're meant for. It stretched credulity.
I could exploit this. I knew I could. But experience and instinct told me to tread carefully. You don't believe there's a perfect match for every person?
If I didn't, would I be employing you?
Rosalind grinned.
But perfect? No, not really. I'm not expecting perfect. At best, I think we can hope for good enough.
I stopped and turned, letting her take her arms back. I needed to see what she did with them. Immediately, Rosalind shoved her hands in her pockets, but her shoulders and elbows stayed very relaxed. What about your grandparents? You told me they were, and I quote, so amazingly in love.
They were but perfect? I wouldn't say there weren't any rough spots. I don't know, Xav. I guess I've just given up on all that one true love stuff as fairy tales. When I was younger, I thought I'd know the moment I met the one. But you can't really know what a person's place will be in your life the moment you meet them, right? It's all hogwash.
Can I share something with you that's completely unprofessional? The tease had just the right level of innuendo in it to draw the color to her cheeks.
I suppose,
she sing-songed. I've told you that I used to date frequently.
You did, even though I still can't picture that. Xavier Holmes, international player, and?
And this time it was me blushing. I wasn't looking for the one, but with a single kiss I could tell if a woman and I were. I made a suggestive move with my hands. Compatible.
You mean if you would make good sex buddies?
Rosalind.
What? That's what you mean, isn't it?
Let the record note that you're the one who introduced the term sex buddy into the conversation. I mean, I had a relationship with a few of them. Brief, but still amiable. As you so tactfully told me once, sex is important in a relationship. For me, it is anyway. Being able to figure out that key knowledge was important. It was a limiter, a beta test, a way to save the woman from me letting her down and for me to keep myself from embarrassment.
You're telling me that with one kiss, you can figure out what usually takes me until the fifth date to even suspect?
Splaying my right hand out, I pretended to examine my fingernails. What can I say? I have hidden talents.
Oh, you do not.
She giggled into her hand.
You're lying.
When I reached out and pulled Rosalind to me, her words stopped and my boldness started. Shock froze across her features, but I had no way of knowing if it was because of my sudden move or the fact that her lips were mere inches from mine. Our breaths, misting in the chill of the evening, belie our attempts to stay calm. Rosalind's body sped up inside, even as it presented a wall of immobility on the exterior. I angled her mouth up to mine. Let me prove it. The moment her lips touched mine, I was Rosalind's. Her essence consumed me, emptying into me, filling me with resolution. Few truths had even been more clear. She was all the beauty of Shakespeare and the despair of Dante wrapped into one. She was my purpose. For a moment, she didn't respond, even as I worked my mouth against hers. Then heat flared between us. Rosalind's hands rose, threading through my hair, pulling herself up to me. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her frame to mine as though it stood between me and death. With my lips, with my kiss, I implored her enact what I could not say with voice. Choose me. Please, choose me. And then, without warning, it was over. As though her passion was a faucet that could be thrown open or closed at will, Rosalind's lips sealed shut under mine, and her warmth distanced itself. She examined me. Clinically, expectantly, scientifically, she awaited my edict. I could declare it here. I could tell her that her kiss did more than tell me our bodies were compatible. And judging by the effect I felt inside my slacks, that was a self-evident truth. I could tell her that I'd like nothing more than for her to call off this search. Rosalind crossed her arms over her chest, a chest which still raced with breath as she attempted to calm herself. Why couldn't she understand herself the way I read her so plainly?
Well,
My inner professional slapped the horny caveman within, reminding him of the stakes. I shrugged off my libido and ran a hand through my hair, summoning all the indifference I could muster. I would tell her a truth that would satisfy the moment, but leave the future unclaimed. I don't think it would work out if we tried to hook up for a night. No, it wouldn't. I'd want her much longer than that. Rosalind's head nodded with perceptible concurrence.
that's pretty much how I read it too. Don't get me wrong, you're one hell of a kisser. Just, it lacked something.
I shoved my hands into my pockets, hoping the chilled flesh of my fingers in the area of my nether regions would calm down my excitement. It wasn't quite a cold shower, but Rosalind's reaction helped, dunking my desire in a vat of ice water. Agreed. I offered her an arm again, and hope sprang eternal when she accepted with a grin. Let's get you home. I'm sure you have a big day tomorrow.
Yeah, how do you know that?
Every one of your days is a big day, I said. It would be for me. Suddenly, I knew who the perfect candidate for Rosalind would be. Tomorrow, I needed to figure out how I got her to understand it too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Have Gown Will Wed, written by Killian McRae. The text and audio copyright for this production are held by Killian McRae, the sole owner of the content therein. Digital voice narration provided by 11 Labs. The music you're hearing is Happy Alley, written by Kevin MacLeod and made available via Incompetech.com. It's licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. http creativecommons.org/licenses/by/4.0. See you next time.